Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Farmer Greg here, and welcome to the 445th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where every day we work together to educate and inspire you to become part of your food revolution.
Hey everyone, this is Janice, the Urban Farm Podcast Manager, and I want to say thank you for listening and tell you that with our improved podcasts and newsletters, we are reaching more listeners every day. With all this growth, we've added to our team, and this means we can't operate from our pocket change anymore. We want to thank Lacrosse Boots for becoming a sponsor, helping us make this episode possible, and sustaining our podcast mission. Please consider supporting them when you get your next pair of farm boots.
At Lacrosse Boots, we salute the land, the rolling acres you've come to know like the back of your own hands, the fertile soil where your family has grown and your everyday moments have blossomed into everlasting memories. For this land is your land, your bedrock, your private parcel of earth that keeps you firmly grounded to what truly matters most. Lacrosse Boots, done right since 1897. Visit us at lacrossefootwear.com to find a dealer near you.
Today on our podcast, we have someone who homesteads with a passion and purpose. We're talking with Julia Hubler about gardening with a plan. Julia lives in Arizona on 2.5 acres with hot summers, lots of cacti, and amazing sunsets. She is a homeschool graduate living with her family, and every day you'll find her raising guineas, making dinner, milking goats, and writing all about it. You can find her at reformstead.com. Welcome to the show today, Julia.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. So I just shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at today?
Yeah, sure. I'm a Christian homeschool graduate. I live with my parents and 5 younger siblings in Buckeye, Arizona. And my mom and dad got me interested in homesteading when I was about 15 years old. I would help my mom on and off before that with gardening. But about 15, I really got interested in reading homestead books and learning as much as I could about homesteading and raising chickens and everything. And I've always helped my dad with lots of big projects like building fences, butchering, and more things like that. And then about 15 or 17, between those years, I really took on a lot of the taking care of chickens and gardening and stuff like that. And then a few years later, we moved and expanded more, and I was able to do a whole lot more, and we had chickens, we'd got milk goats.
So what is homesteading to you?
Homesteading, well, it's raising animals and gardening, not always perfectly, actually, most of the time not perfectly. The garden doesn't always look like picture perfect like you'd imagine it, and things don't always go the way you want them to, but it's trying to raise your own food on the land you have.
Cool. And what got you really excited and motivated about doing this?
Well, my parents were kind of starting, and I don't know, I just really liked reading about it and learning about it. There wasn't any one big thing. It was kind of just, I just got interested in it from reading.
Yeah, so it sounds like, to me, it was there for you to do.
Yes, right.
That's one of the really cool things in my life. I'm 58 years old, and when I was 14, I wrote a paper on how we were overfishing the oceans. This was back in the mid-'70s. I to this day don't know where that came from, but this whole notion of growing your own food and sustainability, even back then for me, it was just there for me to do. And I don't even know why. And it sounds to me like that might be the case for you too.
Yeah, I guess similar, yeah.
So can you paint a picture of what your homestead looks like? How many acres? If we were going to walk up the driveway and look at the space, what would we see?
Well, right now you see there's our house, and it's about 2.5 acres, and we have most of that fenced in. We have a big garden on one side. It's about a 1/4 acre.
Wow.
We're not gardening. We're not gardening all of it though right now. It turned out to be too much, so we shrunk it down to how much we're actually gardening.
Uh-huh.
And then we have chickens kind of running all over the place. And then right now we actually have about 35 meat chickens, 35 to 40 meat chickens in tractors in the grass out there. And then we have goats, lots of goats, a few that we're milking, and then some that we're going to butcher for meat. And then we have a milk cow. She still needs to be bred, but then we'll be milking her.
Mm-hmm.
We also have trees planted around the yard.
I have a note here that you actually have attended some of my tree classes in the past and have some of our trees in your yard.
Yes, we do. Yep.
Nice. You remember what kind they were?
Well, the ones that are doing best right now are definitely the citrus and the pomegranates and figs. They're growing really well.
Nice. You mentioned the word chicken tractors. Can you tell everybody what that is?
Sure. I think they're about 8 feet by 8 feet. Ours are anyway, and they're a low structure that goes on the ground. It has wheels, so it's movable. It's a place for the chickens to be that lets them have access to pasture instead of having to confine raise them.
So they're basic. It's a movable chicken coop that you just move in the pasture, and then they get to eat bugs and weeds. And
Yep.
Nice. And it sounds like with 40 or so meat birds, you probably raise enough chickens for your family.
We do. We try to raise about. We start with 50. We sometimes things happen and they don't make it. So we start with 50, and our goal is to do that twice a year, and that will more than cover what our family has ate.
Nice. I'm not a vegetarian, although I lean heavily toward being a vegetarian. About 10 years ago here at the Urban Farm, I decided I was going to raise some meat birds because we've had laying chickens here for a couple of decades now. So I went through the entire process of raising the chicks from chick to plate. And it happens fast, doesn't it?
Yes. Did you have the Cornish cross?
Yeah, we did have the Cornish cross. Exactly.
Yeah, they grow fast.
Like fast, like 8 weeks fast, right?
Yeah, ours are 9 weeks right now, and they're pretty big. We're on the alert to be ready to butcher with a pretty short notice here.
Right. And how do you feel about that, raising an animal to then butcher it and eat it? Talk to me about that a little bit, would you?
Yeah, sure. Well, in the Bible, it is definitely allowed that we can eat meat, so we are fine with it. We enjoy the meat. It tastes good, so we don't have a problem with eating it and butchering. I don't know. I've never really had a problem with it, so it's just. Everyone has a problem with it, but then they go to the restaurant and they eat a burger.
Exactly.
Where'd that burger come from?
That's a big piece of what I like to do with the people, with my guests on the podcast, is make those connections.
Right, yeah.
And that's the reason that I went and actually raised some meat birds here on the property. So it sounds to me like you have a really nice homestead there, and you're raising meat, you're raising vegetables, you've got fruit trees. How much of the food do you raise for your family? You must be eating out of your yard every day.
We do fairly well, but we have seasons where we definitely have more coming from the yard, and seasons where there's a lot less that we're actually being able to eat every day. So the chicken is one source, but we've had some learning processes where we've kind of not been able to do that one year, and then we're eating store-bought chicken for that season until we can get more going again. We've done a lot of lettuce gardening. That grows really well here, and we really like a lot of salads. What kind was that, Julia? Lettuce. Oh yes, lots of greens grow here really well. Yeah, we love the lettuce too. So it tastes. We get spoiled on the lettuce. It's like who wants to eat the store-bought lettuce when you can have it taste so much fresher from the yard. So exactly. Yeah, and then we've gone through seasons of lots of eggs, more eggs than we could possibly eat. But then they have their slow times, and right now we're in need of replacing our flock of egg layers. So we're kind of not getting eggs right now. But we also have lemons coming from our trees. We had a lot of figs last year, and yeah. Do you sell any of your excess at market, or do you share with neighbors? What do you do with it when you have too many eggs? Well, when we have too many eggs, sometimes we'll give them to people at church. We haven't gotten into the selling yet. Kind of like maybe a next step sometime in the future, but we want to get a little more consistent for ourselves first. Yeah, perfect. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was you're young, and I wanted you to share your experiences around your homestead, but you've written a book called The Ultimate Vegetable Garden Planner, and you sent me a copy of it, and it's a PDF, so it's a virtual book. I was really blown away. This is a cool book that you've written. Tell me about it. I was looking up vegetable garden planners, I don't know, a year or so ago. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that there was a need for like a really good, thorough planner. There were some planners out there, but they were like, a couple pages. There wasn't anything that looked like it covered everything. So I started working on creating one that would cover most anything that you could think of needing to record or plan for your vegetable garden. So I looked at other planners out there and got tips from that. And then I also just tried to include as much stuff that I could think that anyone needing planning or recording a vegetable garden would need to know.
Mm-hmm. So it's really a garden journal, right?
It is. It does have planner pages in it, though, so it's both. But with the gardening, a lot of times keeping records and knowing what you did is really important. And I know there were definitely things that I wish I had recorded and I haven't from earlier years. So.
Right. That's a really big piece of data to keep a hold of. It's an important one, because if you plant fruit trees in your yard, you want to know what the variety is. That's something you could keep track in your journal, right?
Yeah, there isn't a section specifically for the orchard, but it's definitely something you could tweak it and use it like that, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And you self-published it. How did you make that happen?
I've self-published before, so I format it myself, and then I just get a website that I can sell it on, a platform, and I list it for sale, and people have bought it.
Cool. You must be pretty smart for that, huh?
Oh, my mom helped me learn a lot of the website stuff that I know.
Nice. And so where can we find the book at?
It's at my website, homestead.com. There's a little shop button in the corner, and that'll take you to where it's for sale.
Perfect. That is reformstead.com. Cool. So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you learned from it.
I think one of the things that we definitely had a problem with early on was trying to do things on our farm, like our little homestead, 2.5 acres, trying to model our homestead after the big monoculture farms out there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we did, for example, was our orchard. When we first planned that out, we planned it out in a yard that was off to the side and looked like a great place for it. But we also planned them in straight rows and everything like that. And then I learned later that those weren't necessarily the best way to do it. Number one, the placement looks really good, but the trees, there's not as much water there as there is in other parts of our yard. We have a wash running through the middle of our yard, and the trees I planted on that wash are definitely doing a lot better than the ones over in other areas of the yard where it's just a little bit drier and kind of more on a hill instead of in a wash. So that placement is definitely not the best for that. And then also, when I first planted the trees, I thought, Palo Verdes, mesquites, these native trees that we have in Arizona don't have a place in the orchard. But then I learned that the Palo Verdes and mesquites are actually legumes, which are nitrogen-fixing trees.
Yep.
And so they actually add nitrogen into the soil from the air. They convert it to the soil, and they make it available for the fruit trees. So now I'm working all these native trees back into the orchard and trying to intersperse them so that our fruit trees have a natural source of nitrogen, along with the manure and stuff we give them.
The other thing that they can do is provide shade for your trees. They act as nurse trees for them.
Yes, and here in Arizona it gets hot and they need some of that.
Yeah, exactly. So are you planting any mesquite trees that are of the edible variety?
We have some that will grow pods. Yeah, I kind of just start them from seed almost. Like I'll find them sprouting in our yard, and I'll transplant them when they're really tiny, and then they grow up from that. So I don't really know what they are until they get to maturity. But
right.
We have one tree that grows the beans on it.
How do the beans taste?
I tasted them a while ago. I think they're good.
Yeah, so
I can't remember.
They'll start ripening in late May or early June. If you go out and grab one when it's dry and hanging on the tree and snap it in half and just kind of nibble on the end, that'll let you know if it's a nice edible bean. And if they are, for here in the Phoenix metropolitan area, we just bought a mesquite bean mill. It's a hammer mill to mill them into flour. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so be cognizant of that when the mesquite beans come. Be cognizant that you want to be trying them. And if they taste good, you want to harvest a bunch off of the tree and come down and bring them and have them be milled.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the goats like them too.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's like a treat to them.
Yep, they're high in fiber and high in protein. They really are a treat for them. So, and it sounds to me like your biggest success was kind of wrapped up in the failure there.
Yes, I definitely, we haven't seen the full benefits of it yet, but we're working on doing the right thing and hoping that the trees will do better with that.
Yeah, perfect. And what drives you?
Ultimately, Jesus Christ drives me in everything I do, including Homestead.
So, if you could recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be and why?
There are a lot of good books out there, but I really like You Can Farm by Joel Salatin. His book brings more of a permaculture mindset to the homestead instead of the monoculture homesteading that some people try.
Yeah. Well, Joel's great. I've had him on the show, actually. He was on episode 310. It was about a year and a half ago. So if you get an opportunity, go look up Joel Salatin on our podcast. You also mentioned the P word, as I like to call it, permaculture. Tell me a little bit about how that fits into what you're doing.
Well, to me, permaculture is really like taking the Dominion mandate to its ultimate. A lot of people in permaculture, they think about what's best for the plant, and they really focus in on how to do the best for the plant and the environment. As a Christian, I want to get things to work together as best I can because God is orderly and that's how He wants things.
Cool. If you had one piece of advice for our listeners, what would it be?
Well, probably to be willing to try new things and just fail when you try them. Definitely something that we've done a lot of over the years.
Experiment?
Yes, experiment and failing sometimes the first couple times even. So, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Julia.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And how can our listeners get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me at my blog, reformstead.com, and I'm also on some other social media platforms. But the best way is reformstead.com.
Perfect. We also want to thank you today, Julia, as you've offered us 5 digital versions of your book, The Ultimate Vegetable Garden Planner. And we're going to share them with some lucky members of our listening audience. Email podcast@urbanfarm.org with the subject line, I have a passion for gardening. Make sure you provide us your name, email, and mailing address, and we will pick 5 random emails from the first 50 people who respond. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/reformstead. We are your urban farming resource. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and everywhere podcasts are found. Also visit urbanfarm.org for articles, webinars, courses, and more. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast.
At Lacrosse Boots, we salute the land. The rolling acres you've come to know like the back of your own hands. The fertile soil where your family has grown and your everyday moments have blossomed into everlasting memories. For this land is your land, your bedrock, your private parcel of earth that keeps you firmly grounded to what truly matters most. For it is the land of bonfires that torch a night sky, the land of dirt-flinging afternoons that wash away everything but the here and the now, the land where you plant seeds of strength and promise, of faith and togetherness. And so, with rubber on foot and pride in soul, you work the land, you play the land, proudly honoring the timeless agreement that by always nurturing the land, it will forever return the favor. Lacrosse Boots, done right since 1897. Visit us at lacrossefootwear.com to find a dealer near you.